You ever have a day that kills you, but nobody notices you died? For me, that day wasn't the day I got fired. It was the day I realized the man I loved, the man I trusted, had destroyed me long before he even smiled at me. I still remember the sound of his voice echoing through that glass office. Cold and sharp, as if every word he spoke was meant to slice through whatever was left of me. "You're finished here. Emma, clean out your desk." Just like that. No explanation, no emotion, just silence and the click of a door closing behind me. That was the day I died. Not physically, emotionally, and nobody came to my funeral. I used to be the girl who smiled too much. The one who believed in hard work pays off, who thought kindness could fix cruelty. But New York doesn't care about kind girls. Especially in the advertising world, it eats them alive, and the men in expensive suits just watch. When I joined Hawthorne and Lane, I thought I was walking into a dream. A glittering skyline, glass elevators, power suits, the smell of ambition everywhere. And then there was him. Daniel Hawthorne, CEO, visionary, the kind of man who made a room bend around him. His confidence wasn't loud. It was lethal. The first time I met him, he said something that never left me. "You're not built for this industry, Carter, but I like a challenge." I should have walked away, but I didn't, because he didn't just challenge me. He saw me, or at least, that's what I thought. In those early days, I'd stay late just to prove myself. He'd come by my desk at midnight, loosen his tie, pour himself another drink and ask, "You really think you can make it here?" And I'd laugh nervously. "I have to." "Good," he'd say, "because the weak ones never last." I didn't realize then. He was testing how much I'd let him break me before I'd finally snap. And he broke me in ways I didn't even know I could break. The nights grew longer. The lines blurred. Between mentorship and something else. Between admiration and obsession. He'd call me into his office after hours, close the blinds, and talk about vision. Passion, loyalty, words. That sounded like promises, until the day they didn't. It started small. A lingering touch on my wrist when he leaned over my presentation, a compliment that crossed the line. Then dinners, that turned into strategy sessions. He made me feel seen, wanted, special, until one morning I walked into the office and saw the new intern sitting at his desk, wearing his suit jacket, and when she turned, she smiled at me. That smile told me everything. Rumors spread fast in offices like ours. By lunchtime, everyone had something to say. By evening, I wasn't the talented Emma Carter anymore. I was the girl Daniel played. And the worst part? He didn't deny it. He didn't defend me. He just watched me fall and smiled. Didn't cry that night. I didn't scream. I just stared at the city from my tiny apartment window, watching the lights blur through the rain, and whispered, "You win, Daniel." But even then, something inside me whispered back, "Not yet," because what Daniel didn't know was that he hadn't met all of me yet. He'd only met the woman who loved him. Not the one who would come back for him. Not the one who would burn everything he'd ever built, brick by brick, lie by lie. And as I packed my things into a cardboard box that night, I realized something chilling. Sometimes, revenge doesn't start with anger. It starts with silence. And mine had already begun. There's a strange kind of peace that comes after you lose everything. It's quiet, cold, almost freeing. Because once you've been destroyed completely, there's nothing left to fear. That's how I felt in the weeks after Daniel fired me. Like a ghost walking through her own life. Invisible, unheard, untouchable. I'd wake up every morning in my tiny Brooklyn apartment, stare at the ceiling and ask myself the same question. How could I have been so blind? But every time I thought of his smirk, his voice, the way he made me feel small, that question started to change. It wasn't how could I have been so blind. It became, How could he think I'd stay that way? The city didn't stop for me. The trains still screamed through the tunnels. The billboards still flashed Hawthorne and Lane's new campaigns. And his face was everywhere. Awards, interviews, headlines calling him the visionary of Madison Avenue. I'd see his photo in every business magazine on the stands, and every time it felt like a knife twisting deeper. But one night, somewhere between hatred and exhaustion, I realized something. Daniel had built his empire on one thing: perception. He didn't care about truth, only image, control, power, and people like that. They don't fall when you attack their heart. They fall when you shatter their image. That's when my silence turned into strategy. I stopped drinking coffee in cafes, where our employees used to go. I stopped crying to friends who still worked for him. I deleted every trace of Emma, Carter online, and then I started studying him, every deal Hawthorne and Lane made, every client they signed, every rumor on industry forums. I built a private file, one that grew thicker every week. But information wasn't enough. If I wanted to hurt Daniel, I had to become him, think like him, play like him, and then outsmart him. So I made myself disappear. For 2 years, I lived quietly, worked freelance jobs, took online business courses under a fake name, studied market strategy, investment portfolios, psychological leadership. I was rebuilding myself, not as Emma the employee, but as someone Daniel would never recognize. Every late night I spent crying before turned into late nights learning how men like him rise, and more importantly, how they fall. Then one day, fate came knocking. I was consulting for a small marketing startup in Midtown when I noticed their biggest client, Hawthorne and Lane, the same company that destroyed me, unknowingly, paying me through a third-party vendor to fix their mess. I laughed when I saw the name on the invoice. Felt poetic, almost divine. Like the universe had just whispered, "He's still within reach." That night, as I stared at my reflection, I didn't see Emma Carter anymore. I saw the woman he created, cold, strategic, precise. The girl who once begged for approval was gone, and in her place stood a ghost haunting the man who buried her. So I made a decision. If Daniel could build an empire that destroyed people, then I'd build one that destroys him, and I'd do it the way he least expected, from inside his world. I created a new company, Nova Strategies, legally untouchable, hidden behind foreign investors and silent partners, a faceless entity with one purpose: to strip Hawthorne and Lane of its power, client by client, lie by lie. It started small. We'd outbid them on mid-level accounts, offer better terms, cleaner work, faster results. Within months, their revenue dropped 12%. By the end of the year, Nova was stealing contracts that Daniel used to brag about in every interview, and yet he never saw it coming. Because to him, Nova was just another rival firm. He didn't know its founder had once loved him. He didn't know the ghost he fired had built a storm in. Silence, but I wasn't satisfied. Not yet. Revenge isn't just about taking what someone has. It's about making them realize you were always the real threat, and to do that, I needed to get closer. So I reached out to his investors. I pitched collaborations. I attended the same conferences, stood in the same rooms, smiled at the same people who once ignored me. And when someone mentioned his name, I smiled softly and said, "I've heard of him," as if he were just another man. But every night, as I lay awake in my penthouse overlooking the city lights, I could still hear his voice in my head. "You're not built for this industry, Carter," and I'd whisper back to the darkness, "You're right, I'm not built for it. I'm built to destroy it, because Daniel thought he'd buried me. But ghosts don't stay buried. They wait, they watch, and when the time is right, they come home, and mine had just knocked on his door. Revenge isn't loud. It doesn't come with explosions or screaming confrontations. It whispers. It walks into the room quietly and pretends to smile. That's exactly what I did the night I met Daniel again. It was the New York Marketing Summit, a glittering evening drenched in champagne and artificial laughter. Every major executive in the industry was there, a room full of people pretending to admire each other while secretly counting each other's failures. And there I was, in a midnight black dress, hair swept up, face calm, the ghost he created, now walking among the living. Nova Strategies had been nominated for Emerging Agency of the Year. Daniel's company, Hawthorne and Lane, had been nominated too, but for the first time in a decade, they weren't the favorite to win. I didn't need a mirror to know how I looked. I designed it. Every detail of that night was calculated. The subtle diamond earrings, the scent he once said reminded him of ambition, and the confidence that made silence feel dangerous. I wasn't Emma Carter anymore. That name was buried under the ashes of my past. The world knew me as Elena Ward now, and Elena had come to collect her debt. When I entered the ballroom, I saw him immediately. Daniel Hawthorne, my former boss, my former everything. He was surrounded by people, laughing that same rehearsed laugh I once fell for. Time had been kind to him, his hair a little grayer, his jaw sharper, but the arrogance, that was untouched, and when his eyes found mine across the room, he froze. Just for a second, but it was enough. Our gaze locked, two ghosts recognizing each other in a room full of masks. He tilted his head slightly, confused, intrigued. I smiled faintly, as if greeting a stranger, and walked past him like he was air. It burned him. I could see it. Men like Daniel hate being ignored. They feed on acknowledgement. Even hatred feels like attention. So I starved him of both. "Ms. Ward," a voice called out behind me. One of the event organizers. "Mr. Hawthorne was asking about you. He's quite impressed by Nova's rise." I turned, smiling. "Is he?" I said softly. "Then I suppose it's time he learned who he's impressed by." Minutes later, he approached me himself. That same smooth confidence, that same deceptive charm. "Daniel. Elena Ward, right? Nova Strategies?" "Me. That's right, Daniel. Daniel Hawthorne. I've heard impressive things." "Me. So have I. Though most impressive things aren't always true." He smiled, the kind of smile that used to melt me once, but this time, it only made me colder. "Daniel, I feel like we've met before." "Me. Maybe in another life." Our eyes locked again. For a brief second, I could see confusion, maybe recognition, flicker in his gaze. But then the crowd around us shifted, and someone congratulated me on Nova's nomination. Daniel stepped back, watching, analyzing. He was intrigued. That was the first move. When the lights dimmed for the award ceremony, I could feel his stare from across the table. It was strange, how the man who once dismissed me was now trying to figure me out. The host announced the winner, Nova Strategies. The applause hit like thunder. I walked to the stage, heels clicking against the marble. Each step echoing the years I spent crawling in silence. I didn't look at him when I accepted the award, but I felt his eyes burning into me. That same mixture of fascination and fury that only powerful men feel when they realize they're not in control anymore. After the ceremony, he found me again. "Daniel, congratulations. You've built something remarkable." "Me. Thank you. I built it from experience." "Daniel. Experience with who?" "Me. With people who taught me everything I needed to know, mostly about betrayal." He paused. There it was again, that flicker of suspicion. Something in my tone touched the ghost of his memory. "Daniel, you remind me of someone, me. Do I?" Leaning closer. "Then I must be careful. Your memory seems dangerous." He laughed softly, but his eyes were no longer relaxed. For the first time that night, I saw it, the seed of unease. And that's how revenge truly begins. Not with destruction, but with doubt. Later, when the gala ended, and I walked out into the cold New York air, the city lights reflected off the glass towers like broken stars, I stood there for a moment, holding my award, and whispered to myself, "He doesn't know it yet, but he's already standing in my trap." Because this wasn't just about the past anymore. It was about control, the kind he once used to destroy me. Now it was mine, and tomorrow, Daniel Hawthorne would receive a personal invitation from Elena Ward, CEO of Nova Strategies, offering a lucrative partnership proposal, a proposal that would bring him closer than ever to his own downfall. Power has a smell. It's the scent of leather chairs, old whiskey, and quiet confidence. And as I sat across from Daniel Hawthorne in his glass-walled office overlooking Fifth Avenue, I could smell it everywhere, but this time, it didn't intimidate me, it thrilled me. He leaned back in his chair, arms folded, studying me, that same analytical gaze I once adored, the one that used to make me stammer in meetings, now only made me smile, because he didn't know who I was. He didn't know he was sitting across from the woman he'd broken. And that's what made it delicious, Daniel. "So, Elena, you're proposing a collaboration between Nova and Hawthorne and Lane. What's the real angle here?" "Me, no angle. Just opportunity." I let my words linger. Measured, slow, calculated. "You're losing clients. I'm gaining them. Together we could rebuild what your firm used to be." He smirked, tapping his pen against the desk. "Daniel, you're direct. I like that. Me. You liked it the first time too." For a split second, a heartbeat, he froze. Then laughed, brushing it off as banter. But I saw it. That flicker of confusion, the ghost of familiarity. He poured 2 glasses of whiskey, the same brand he used to keep in his drawer back. When I was his assistant, the drawer I used to organize for him, he handed me a glass. "Daniel, to new beginnings, me. To unfinished business." The glasses clinked. But mine didn't tremble this time. The meeting stretched into hours. We discussed numbers, contracts, marketing plans. But beneath every word, there was a hidden current, tension, curiosity. A strange, dangerous chemistry neither of us could ignore. He kept testing me. Subtle questions, personal hints, compliments wrapped in suspicion. And every time, I gave him exactly what he needed, half the truth, wrapped in perfect confidence. By the end of the meeting, he was hooked. He didn't trust me completely, not yet, but he wanted to, and that was enough. Daniel. "All right, Elena, let's make this official. Me. You won't regret it." "Daniel, I hope not. I've had enough regrets for one lifetime." The irony almost made me laugh. Outside his office, his assistant, a young brunette, smiled politely as I passed. I caught her nameplate, Claire, and for a second, I saw my younger self in her, hopeful, eager, naive. I wanted to warn her, to whisper, "Don't trust him, don't fall for his charm," but I didn't, because every trap needs its pattern to stay consistent. And Daniel's pattern was his ego. The next few weeks were an elegant war. Conference calls, strategy meetings, shared client pitches. On the surface, everything looked like a powerful partnership. But beneath it all, I was mapping his weaknesses. He still micromanaged, still ignored warning signs, still underestimated people who didn't bark loudly, and that's exactly what I was. Silent thunder. One night, after a long strategy session, we were the last two left in the office. New York shimmered beyond the windows, and the city hummed like a restless heartbeat. He loosened his tie, turned toward me. "Daniel, you know, I can't figure you out." "Me. That's the point. Daniel, you walk into my world like you own it. You know exactly how I think. How do you do that?" I smiled faintly, meeting his gaze. "Me. Maybe I've met someone like you before." "Daniel. And how did that end?" "Me. Badly. For him." He stared at me, eyes darkening, not with anger, but intrigue, the kind that's half fear, half attraction, and I knew right then. He was falling into the web. That night, as I walked to my car, I looked up at his office window one last time. He was still there, standing by the glass, watching me leave, and for the first time in years, I felt it, not pain, not hate, but control. The next morning, my assistant handed me the finalized partnership documents. Hawthorne and Lane had officially signed a 6-month deal with Nova Strategies. Their biggest accounts were now being co-managed. By me. It meant full access to their systems, their financial reports, their investor meetings, everything. Daniel had just handed me the keys to his empire. That night, I opened my laptop, pulled up the confidential folders Hawthorne and Lane had shared, and stared at the logo I once used to love. Then, slowly, I began dragging files into a new folder titled Collapse. Because this wasn't just business anymore. This was surgery, and I was cutting straight through the heart of the man who once broke mine. As I closed my laptop, my phone buzzed. A message from Daniel. "Daniel, dinner tomorrow to celebrate our partnership." I stared at it for a long moment. The same man who once destroyed me, now wanted to celebrate with me. My lips curved into a cold, slow smile. Me, typing. Of course, let's celebrate. But what I didn't type, what he'd soon learn, was that the dinner wasn't to celebrate our partnership. It was to mark the beginning of his undoing. They say revenge should be served cold, but that night, it was burning. Slow. Intoxicating. Like a glass of red wine poisoned with memories. Daniel had chosen the restaurant, the Lexington House, a place he used to take high-end clients. And me. Once before. I was a mistake on his payroll. The lights were low, the air heavy with the scent of aged oak and secrets. I arrived exactly 3 minutes late, the perfect amount of time to make him wait, to make him wonder. When I walked in, he stood up instantly. Same confidence, same tailored suit, but his eyes were studying me differently now. "Daniel, you look stunning." "Elena, me. I tend to when I'm not being underestimated." He smiled. That familiar half smile that once melted my logic. It didn't work this. Tima had only reminded me why I was there. The waiter poured wine. Daniel lifted his glass. "Daniel, to partnerships. And second chances, me." "Careful with second chances, Daniel. Some people use them to finish what they started." He laughed softly, but there was tension beneath it. I saw the flicker again. That instinct that told him something about me wasn't what it seemed. Good. Suspicion was a wound I wanted him to scratch. For the first hour, we talked business, client projections, investor meetings, strategic expansion. But the air between us was electric. Every word was layered. Every glance loaded. He leaned closer. "Daniel, you remind me of someone. Someone I once cared about, me. What happened to her?" "Daniel, she betrayed me." "Me. Or maybe you just didn't like being outplayed." He stared at me, and for the first time didn't have a quick reply, only silence and something else. Fascination. When the food came, he tried to steer the conversation personal. Old habits die hard. "Daniel, you don't talk much about yourself. Family, relationships, me, both overrated. Daniel, so no one waiting at home? Me, just ambition. She's very demanding." He chuckled, shaking his head. "Daniel, you sound like me. Years ago." Me. "Then I should probably apologize to everyone you hurt." That landed. He looked at me differently after that, half impressed, half haunted, and for the first time that evening, I saw regret in his eyes. Regret, that dangerous emotion that makes even the cruel look human. I hated it, because it made my heart hesitate. For a moment, I remembered the Daniel I once loved, the man who stayed up late editing campaigns beside me, the man who once said, "You're the only person here who actually believes in the work." I remembered that night, his hand brushing mine, his voice softer than whiskey, his kiss that felt like both promise and warning. But that Daniel didn't exist anymore, and the man sitting across from me had killed him, so I smiled. And killed what little softness was left inside me. After dinner, he walked me to my car. The air outside was cold, sharp, alive with the hum of the city. Streetlights painted golden streaks on the pavement. He turned to me. Voice lower now. "Niall, you really are something. Elena, you've done what most can't." Me. "Survive?" Daniel. "No, command a room." "Command me." There it was, his weakness, spoken without realizing it. He was already giving me the power he once stole. I stepped closer, close enough for him to feel my breath. Me. "Be careful, Daniel. You have a habit of underestimating the wrong women." His smile faltered, just slightly, and that's when I knew I had him. When I got into my car, I watched him in the rearview mirror. He stood there for a long time, hands in his pockets, looking confused, intrigued, maybe even drawn. And that's when I whispered to myself, "That's it. Let the devil fall in love with his own punishment." Back home, I opened my laptop and reviewed the recordings. Hidden, in the small pin-shaped brooch on my dress, was a mic capturing every word of the dinner. "She betrayed me. You remind me of her." That was enough for a start, enough to open a few old wounds in the media if needed, but that wasn't the real weapon. The real weapon was proximity, and now I had it. Over the next few weeks, our partnership deepened. We attended meetings together. Clients noticed the chemistry, and so did the office. Whispers began. Is something going on between them? Daniel and Elena, that's getting interesting. I let the rumors grow, because power loves distraction, and Daniel's was about to collapse under the weight of his own temptation. One evening, after a presentation that went flawlessly, Daniel stayed behind while everyone left. "Daniel, you know, sometimes I wonder if I'm the one being studied here." Me. "Maybe you are, Daniel. Then tell me, what's your conclusion?" Me. That the man who once thought he couldn't be broken already is. He froze. That familiar flicker of something, recognition, flashing in his eyes again. "Daniel, have we met before?" Me. "Maybe." I smiled faintly. "But back then, you weren't looking." And then I walked out, leaving him with that thought, a question that would eat him alive. That night, I lay awake staring at the city skyline. The lights looked like fireflies caught between glass and steel. Beautiful, but trapped. That was him. And soon, he'd burn from the inside out. but somewhere, deep down in the ashes, I felt something move, something I didn't want to name, because revenge was supposed to make me feel powerful. Not conflicted, not seen. And that terrified me more than he ever did. You can always tell when someone starts remembering you. It's in their eyes. That flicker of recognition they can't quite name, like a shadow moving just behind the glass. And lately, Daniel's eyes were haunted by shadows. It started with questions, subtle at first. A casual, "Where did you say you worked before Nova?" Or, "You remind me of someone I used to know." The kind of questions people ask when they feel something crawling up from the past, something they buried too soon. I answered them smoothly, always smiling, always one step ahead of his curiosity. But behind the calm, I felt the tremor, because the closer he looked, the more dangerous the game became. Our partnership had made us inseparable in the public eye. Every magazine, every investor blog, the power duo of Madison Avenue. The irony made me laugh sometimes. If only they knew that behind those perfect smiles and press photos, we were circling each other like predators pretending to dance. One evening, we were in his office late again. The skyline was dark, except for the silver reflection of the city lights against the glass walls. The air between us was heavy, not with work, but with something unsaid. He leaned back in his chair, watching me as I organized documents. "Daniel, Elena, or should I say Emma?" The pen in my hand slipped. My name, my real name, sliced through the air like a bullet. I looked up slowly. "Me. Excuse me?" "Daniel. Emma Carter." He smiled faintly. It took me a while, but I never forget a voice. Or a pair of eyes. The world stopped moving for a heartbeat. My pulse roared in my ears. I'd prepared for every possible scenario, every business trap, every legal move, every lie, except this one, being seen. "Me. You're mistaken." "Daniel." "No, I'm not." He stood up, slowly, his voice softer now. "You disappeared after I fired you. I thought you'd moved on, but here you are, running the only company that's been able to beat me. Tell me, Emma, why come back?" He wasn't angry, not yet. He was curious, and that was worse. I held his gaze, calm, emotionless. Years of rehearsed control stitched my expression in place. "Me. Because you taught me everything I needed to know." He laughed quietly, stepping closer. "Yell. Revenge, then?" "Me. Justice. Daniel. Same thing, depending on who's telling the story." He moved around the desk. Closer now, too close. His cologne, his voice, his presence. It all came rushing back, threatening to drown my focus. "Daniel, you could have destroyed me from the outside, Emma, but you came back into my world. Why?" "Me. Because destruction isn't enough, Daniel." I leaned closer. "I wanted you to feel it. The fear, the uncertainty, the loss of control. For a moment, neither of us spoke. The silence between us was heavier than any argument. He stared at me, the way a man looks at a storm he knows he caused but can't stop. "Daniel, I did hurt you." "Me. You didn't just hurt me. You erased me, Daniel. And yet here you are, stronger than I've ever seen you." His words caught me off guard, because they didn't sound like pride or manipulation. They sounded like regret. Real. Human. Regret. And for the first time since I started this war, I didn't know what to say. He turned away, pouring whiskey into 2 glasses. The silence stretched. "Daniel. You know, Emma, I think about that day often. The day I fired you. Me. Good. You should. Daniel. I thought I was protecting myself. You were too good, too close. People were talking. Me. So you punished me for what they said? Daniel. No. I punished you for what I felt. My breath caught. He looked at me, eyes raw for the first time. Daniel. You were the only person in that office who made me forget the game. I hated that. For a moment, the air between us wasn't sharp anymore. It was fragile, and that terrified me more than his power ever did. Because deep inside, a small part of me, the part I thought I'd buried, wanted to believe him. Wanted to believe that behind the arrogance and cruelty, there had once been something real. But that's the problem with ghosts. They whisper what you want to hear before they pull you back into the grave. So, I forced a smile. Me. You really think you can charm your way out of this, Daniel? Daniel. I don't need to charm you. You're here. That tells me everything. Me. You're wrong. I stepped back, reclaiming the distance. I'm here to end what you started. When I left his office that night, the rain had started to fall. Soft, relentless, cleansing. I walked through it without an umbrella, letting it soak through my hair, my dress, my carefully built armor, because something inside me had cracked. Not broken, not yet, but cracked. He knew. He saw me, and that meant the revenge I'd built so perfectly was no longer safe. At home, I poured myself a drink and stared at my reflection in the mirror. The woman staring back wasn't just Elena or Emma. She was something in between, a hybrid of pain and power, of vengeance and vulnerability, and for the first time, I wasn't sure which one was winning. Before I went to bed, I checked my phone. One new message from Daniel. Tomorrow. My house, no business. Just truth. I stared at it for a long time. Every instinct screamed, don't go. But another voice, quieter, darker, it whispered, you have to. Because maybe, to destroy a monster, you have to walk straight into its lair, and maybe, just maybe, that's where you find out if you're still human, or if you've become the monster yourself. When you plan revenge, you imagine control. You think you'll walk in calm, deliberate, a storm wearing heels. But the truth is, revenge doesn't feel like control. It feels like walking into fire and pretending you don't feel the heat. That's exactly what I felt when I drove to Daniel's house that night. His mansion sat on the edge of the hills, where the city lights looked like constellations scattered across the ground. I remembered this place. I'd seen it once. Years ago, in a magazine photo during a company gala. Back then, I thought it looked like a dream. Now it looked like a trap. Still, I walked to the door. My heels clicked against the marble steps like a countdown. When he opened it, he wasn't the man from the office. No tailored suit, no calculated charm, just Daniel, in a black shirt, sleeves rolled, whiskey in hand, eyes unreadable. Daniel. You came. Me. I said I would. Daniel. I didn't think you'd actually show up. I smiled. A small, bitter smile. Me. You still underestimate me. He stepped aside, letting me in, and just like that, I was back inside his world. The world that once destroyed mine. His home was silent, beautiful, and cold. Everything was glass and steel, walls reflecting fragments of both of us. As I moved through the hallway, I saw our reflections multiply. Dozens of us, Emma and Daniel, staring back, too many to tell which one was real. Daniel, you always had that look in your eyes. Me, what look? Daniel, like you're already somewhere else. Me, maybe I am. He led me to the living room. The rain had started again, tapping against the tall windows. He poured me a drink without asking. I didn't take it. Me. Why did you ask me here? Daniel. Because I'm tired of pretending we don't remember. I said nothing. He sighed, pacing slowly, like a man walking around an open wound. Daniel. You think you know everything about that day? Emma, but you don't, me. I know you fired me to protect yourself, Daniel. No, I fired you because I was in love with you. The words hit like a slap, sharp, sudden, wrong. Me. That's a pathetic excuse for cruelty, Daniel. Maybe, but it's the truth. He came closer, voice low and cracked. Daniel, you were my best analyst, my equal, and I was falling for you. It scared me. I built my company on control, and you made me lose it. I stared at him, feeling the anger rise. Me. So you destroyed me to feel safe again? Daniel. Yes. No hesitation. Just that one word, brutal in its honesty. I walked toward the window, heart pounding so hard I could hear it. Me. Do you have any idea what you did to me? Daniel. Every day. I see it in your eyes. Me. No, Daniel. You don't. You didn't just ruin my career. You made me question my worth, my sanity, my purpose. You built me up just to prove you could tear me down. He stepped closer, his reflection merging with mine in the glass. Daniel. And yet here you are, stronger than anyone I've ever known, me. Don't you dare romanticize my pain. He looked at me for a long time, then said quietly, Daniel, I know you're planning something. I froze. Me. What are you talking about? Daniel. You think I don't notice the numbers shifting? The deals, the silent board movements, the way your signature appears where mine used to? My blood turned cold. He knew. Not everything, but enough to make me dangerous. And himself, desperate. Daniel. You're good, Emma. I'll give you that. But not invisible. I turned to face him fully now. Me. You made me invisible once, never again. A thunderclap shook the sky. The storm outside echoed the one between us. Daniel. You want my empire? Take it, but don't pretend this is just about business, me. It's about what you took from me. Daniel. You mean your pride? Or your heart? I didn't answer. Because maybe he was right. Maybe I wasn't sure anymore which I wanted back. Then he said something that made the air leave my lungs. Daniel, you're still wearing the necklace. My hand went instinctively to my collarbone, the thin gold chain I'd forgotten I even had on. It was his gift, from years ago, a reminder I had sworn I'd thrown away. I wanted to deny it, to say it meant nothing, but the words wouldn't come. Daniel. You can lie to the world, Emma, but not to me. The tension snapped. I threw the drink against the glass wall. It shattered like the last piece of silence. Me. You don't get to say my name like that. You don't get to talk about love after what you did. Daniel. Then tell me what you want, Emma. Revenge? Say it. Say you want to destroy me. Me. I already have. He froze. Daniel. What did you do? Me. Everything you built. It's mine now, every share, every signature, every board vote. While you were busy chasing ghosts, I became the one holding the knife. He laughed quietly, disbelieving. Daniel. So this is it. You came back to finish me off. Me. No, Daniel. I came back so you'd know exactly who did it. We stood there. Two people who had once loved, now standing on the ashes of what they'd built, and then something unexpected happened. He smiled. Not a cruel smile, a tired one. Daniel. I guess I deserved it, me. You did. He nodded. Slowly, Daniel. Then finish? The rain grew louder, and for a moment, I wanted to. I wanted to destroy him completely, take his company, his name, his legacy. But as I looked at him, I saw not the monster I'd been fighting, but a broken man standing in a house of mirrors, surrounded by his own reflections, and I realized, if I destroyed him now, I'd destroy the only proof that I ever mattered. So I whispered instead, me. You'll live with it. That's the real punishment. I turned to leave. Behind me, Daniel's voice broke through the sound of rain. Daniel. Emma? I stopped but didn't turn. Daniel. I never stopped loving you. I closed my eyes. For a second, I almost believed him. Almost. Then I walked away, and every step felt heavier than victory, because revenge never feels like triumph. It feels like loss, wearing a crown. As I stepped out into the storm, the glass door reflected me one last time, a dozen versions of Emma staring back, and somewhere among them, I caught a glimpse of who I used to be, the girl who just wanted to be seen, loved, respected, but she was gone, and all that remained was the woman who had learned how to burn a world quietly. Revenge has an aftertaste. It's metallic, bitter, cold. They don't tell you that in the beginning, that the moment you win, the victory turns to dust on your tongue. The morning after that storm, the headlines broke like wildfire. Daniel Hayes resigns from Nova Global. CEO shock. Internal takeover exposed. Every outlet had the story. Every anchor called it. The fall of a corporate giant. No one knew that behind those headlines was a woman who'd been quietly pulling the strings. A woman who had waited years for that one sunrise. Me and I watched the news from my penthouse window. The city below looked smaller that morning, humbled, wet with rain, still waking from the storm. Somewhere out there, Daniel was reading those same headlines. Maybe he was pouring his usual black coffee. Maybe he was sitting in the silence I'd left behind. Either way, the empire was gone, and I had won. So why did it feel like I'd just buried a part of myself? I tried to distract myself with the noise of work, board meetings, investor calls, new projects, but everywhere I looked, I saw ghosts, his chair in the meeting room, his glass of whiskey on the shelf, his voice in my memory saying, "You're better than me, Emma." Maybe I was. Maybe that was the problem. A week later, I got a letter, a real one, not an email, not a text, just an envelope, hand-delivered, with no return address. Inside was a single sheet of paper. You were right. Destruction isn't enough. Sometimes the only justice is understanding. I'm leaving the city. Don't look for me. D. No apology. No blame, just silence written in ink. I folded the letter carefully and set it in my drawer. For the first time, I didn't feel angry. I just felt empty. They say revenge gives you closure. It doesn't. It gives you silence. And then it leaves you alone in it. Nights became longer after that. I'd sit by the window, staring at the city lights that once symbolized ambition. Now they looked like little fires burning themselves out, each one a reminder that every victory costs something. One night, I found myself driving again, no destination, no plan, just moving. The rain began to fall, soft and slow, the kind of rain that makes the world feel cleaner, but not lighter, and before I realized it, I was parked outside Daniel's old house. The lights were off, the gate half open, like a story that didn't know how to end. I stepped out. The air smelled of wet earth and endings. Inside, the place was quiet, stripped of furniture, paintings, and life. Only the echo of memories remained. I walked through the living room, my footsteps soft against the hardwood floor. The same room, where he'd told me he loved me, and where I'd told him I'd already destroyed him. The ghosts were thick here, but they weren't cruel. They were tired. On the mantel, there was one thing left behind, a small photo frame. It was us, years ago. Back when I was still just his analyst, and he was still pretending not to fall in love with me. We were laughing. God, I'd forgotten what that looked like. I traced the edge of the photo and whispered, "You took everything from me, Daniel, but you also made me everything I am." And that was the cruelest truth of all, because without his betrayal, I would never have found my strength, but without his love, I would never have lost my soul. I left the photo where it was. Some stories aren't meant to be erased. They're meant to haunt you, just enough to remind you of who you used to be. When I stepped back outside, the rain had stopped. The air felt different, lighter, and for the first time in years, I wasn't chasing anything. Not power, not revenge, not validation, just peace, even if it was temporary. As I drove away, the city lights began to rise on the horizon again. Familiar, distant, almost beautiful. And I thought about all the versions of me that had died in this story. Emma, the dreamer. Emma, the victim. Emma, the avenger. Maybe the real victory wasn't in breaking Daniel. Maybe it was in surviving him. People will tell you my story as a tale of vengeance, of a woman, scorned who rose to power. But that's not the truth. The truth is, it's a story about love, and what happens when love turns into something sharper than hate. Sometimes, I still hear his voice in my head. Not the cruel one, the one that whispered, "You're better than me, Emma." And I smile, because he was right. But what he never understood is that being better doesn't mean being unbroken. It just means learning how to live with the cracks. I parked the car at the overlook where the city glittered below me like spilled diamonds. The same view Daniel once said looked like hope. I finally understood what he meant. Hope isn't about rebuilding what's lost. It's about walking away and still believing you can start again. So I did. I closed my eyes, took a deep breath, and whispered to the night, "Goodbye, Daniel." Then I smiled. Not the practiced kind, but the quiet, honest smile of someone who had finally let go. The storm was over, and the woman who walked away from it wasn't the same one who entered. If you love this epic revenge story and crave more jaw-dropping tales of sweet payback, smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, and ring the bell icon to get notifications for all the thrilling revenge stories coming your way.